children and all living things.
Welcome to Backstory on American Freedom Radio. This is Kate Magdalena Willens, and today's show is a little bit of a departure from what I've done in the past, where I focused mostly on the subject of geoengineering and the protest against geoengineering. I have a new song today, which you heard, United to Save the World, and that song is really about the environment and how we can protect our Earth. But we are united to save the world, with God's help. And today I've got a special two guests that are working to save the world and to bring harmony to this world. And this is in the subject about racism. We're going to be talking about the legacy of slavery today with Dr. Jacqueline Lawrence and her singing partner, colleague, Mandy Brooks. So I'd like to welcome them both to the show. Dr. Jacqueline, hello, and Mandy, hello.
Hello. Hello there, Miss Kate.
Hello. I'd like to begin the show. First, I'm going to introduce them, but before I do, I want to read a little bit of the poem that actually one of Jacqueline's websites inspired me to look at again. And this is the poem by Langston Hughes, the poet who lived from 1902 to 1967. And he wrote, "Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. Oh, it never was America to me. Let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free." So, Dr. Jacqueline, I want to particularly begin with your bio here, which I am just, of course, I had it right here, and now I'm hang on a minute here. Oh, goodness. I'm going to have to. Okay, I'm going to begin with Mandy then, since I have her. Mandy, let me just say, I met Mandy Brooks is a dear friend of mine who goes to the same church that I do. We're both Orthodox Christians, and we're both singers. And we have collaborated together on singing against genetically modified organisms, GMOs. And so Mandy was telling me about Jacqueline and her work with Jacqueline, and we decided to do this show together, and I'm really excited and so happy that Jacqueline has come onto the show. But I want to give you a little bit of insight about Mandy first, since I have this one up. So Mandy discovered singing at a young age as a way to heal her inner struggles and cope with loneliness. And she sang, she performed, but she felt this was not exactly what she was looking for. And at some point, she tried to pursue a degree in music, but she found it was not what she was searching for, and eventually decided to drop out in order to travel and sing. And it was during these travels that she realized that she had a special message to sing to people, but she wasn't sure what the message was. And it was at this time that she converted to become a Christian. She was searching for who she was and her purpose, and she almost put music down completely. And when she began to raise her family, she kind of put music down for a while, as I did. But one day, her children, after listening to a recording that she did, said, "Mom, you need to sing again." And this opened the door for her to music, and it all came flooding back in. And she now is very certain that she wants to use her voice for change and is loving the journey that she's on and the people that she's meeting on that journey. She feels she has come into her purpose. Currently, she's singing about her personal and spiritual experiences. She loves music history and can't seem to get enough of learning about her musician's tribe. She aspires to be some kind of a troubadour. And she's currently impassioned about singing songs to spread the message of what the government is doing to our food, in particular the use of genetically modified organisms. She has a small family band with her 3 children on her 2.5-acre farm, and she is interested in building a business based on organic farming and permaculture. She and her children have educated themselves through books and lectures, and she has a desire to walk down this continued path with music and farming to make a statement and a change, a positive change in our community. Okay, so that was Mandy. Okay, and if that's not fabulous enough, listen to Jacqueline. I met both of these guys the other day, these ladies the other day for coffee, and we talked about the show, and Jacqueline she's really like a Renaissance woman of so many talents and so much capacity and passion. And so this is her biography. She says she's always had a passion for performing, producing, and directing. She is a Christian counselor who has not only shared her talents as an actress, a plus-size pageant winner, singer, model, playwright, lyricist, author of several Christian nonfiction books, poet, producer, and director. She has provided instruction and direction to many people, helping them to succeed and live out their dreams. She is the founder and CEO of Legacy Showcases, a Black history production company that honors the hope and dream of the African slave. Her background includes being a church drama minister and choir member, a talent consultant and pageant judge. In fact, I believe that Jacqueline has a pageant for plus-size teens, which is fantastic. She's been a modeling and acting instructor at Barbizon in San Francisco, Dreamland Productions, and Pure, a nonprofit organization for at-risk children. She has been an actress in several African-American plays, including A Day of Absence, Soul of the Drum, and God's Trombones. I believe she may have even written some of those because she's also a playwright. But here's the really great part here. Not that it's not great so far, but listen to this. As a child, her family frequently read books about slavery, and in time, she began to have much admiration for her slave ancestors, most specifically the strong Mammy character on the plantation and her hero, Harriet Tubman. While recently visiting a slave plantation in Louisiana with her children and grandchildren, she made a pact with the spirits of the slaves in the slave quarters that she would keep their legacy alive. As producer, writer, director, founder, and CEO of Eris Productions, which honors the legacy of the hope and dream of the African slave, she also participated in the following productions: Single and Waiting, A Day in the Life of a Slave, The Evolution of Mammy, and The Spirit of Us. Now, she is also a Christian minister, or I think you're a minister, but she's a doctor. She has earned her master's degree in theology and doctorate in Christian counseling from Sacramento Theological Seminary and Bible College. And she's also specializes in an end times ministry that she calls Stealaways. And she has written a book called Top Secret, which you can find on Amazon, which details her teachings about the end times. And so, Jacqueline and Mandy, I am so happy to have you on the show. So welcome again.
Thank you again, Kate.
Okay. So I wanted to begin with, could you please tell us your story about how you became aware that your work was around the legacy of slavery? What inspired that? You know, in your bio, you talk about being on the slave plantation and feeling this inspiration from the spirits of the slaves themselves. I don't know if you want to begin there or if there's something that preceded that in your childhood or your young adulthood.
Well, Kate, God has a way of preparing us for our destiny, and unbeknownst to me, as you mentioned in my bio, as a child, my family would pass along these slave books. They were novels about the Falconhurst plantation, and we were all engrossed in these novels. I didn't know what that was all about. I didn't think that God was singling me out specifically to move forward with that venture. But as time went on, I started being more and more interested in my culture. I went to an all-black college in Alabama, Tuskegee Institute turned university, after having grown up in Santa Rosa. And I learned more about my culture, and I actually became a little more comfortable being with my own people, because having grown up here in Santa Rosa, I was prejudging some of us as just like some of the non-blacks were. I was raised to kind of be afraid of black people myself. I was raised to think that, not that anybody instilled this in me, just, living in society. I was raised to think that all black guys were pimps and all black women or girls were loud and wild and kind of prostitute-ish, if you will. So I went to an all-black college, and that's when I really learned about my people, and I found out how beautiful so many of them were and could be, and I embraced my culture. Growing up here in Santa Rosa, I was afraid to dance because I danced differently than most. I was afraid that everybody was going to start talking about my hair. Why was it straight one week and curly the next? And I kind of felt ostracized because of my differences being constantly pointed out. Then I started getting into my culture more and more, and I started performing various Black history poems, such as the one that you just read, Let America Be America Again, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. And I started writing poetry of my own, and for many years, I went all over the Bay Area performing a one-woman monologue called Ms. Mammy. And she pretty much spearheaded me enlarging my territory, or God enlarging my territory, because as you mentioned, I went to a plantation about a couple of years ago in Louisiana, and I sat in the slave quarters by myself. I sent the children to the car, and I just wanted to spend some time alone. And God had told me years before, don't let the legacy die. I didn't know what legacy he was talking about. My mom is a business owner. I thought he was talking about her businesses. So that's not what he was talking about. On the slave plantation, years after he told me not to let the legacy die, I had a talk with the slaves, and I told them, I made a promise to them that I would not let their legacy die. I apologized on behalf of all of us, or all of those who were around at that time, for the mistreatment. And I told them that I was going to do my best to make a difference, not only in the lives of white people, but in the lives of blacks as well, who were victimized by the oppression of slavery, and unfortunately still today are affected by this victimization. Yes, I said it, victimization. They're affected by it generationally, perpetually. We are, as African Americans, oftentimes still affected by slavery. Yes.
Can you talk about that? Can you talk about how you perceive that victimization?
Sure. We are victims of a crime. And just like any other victims of a crime, like say a rape victim, many of us were raped. And when you are a rape victim, oftentimes, unless you go to counseling to get healed, you're going to walk around with the torment of that assault. Mm-hmm. You're going to walk around with the torment of that crime. That's going to change your way of thinking. That's going to change your life. And then many of those people who were raped, who were murdered, who were treated harshly, they went on to have children. But they still had the mindset of being victims. Many had low self-esteem while having children because they were so oppressed. And generationally, that low self-esteem has been perpetuated. So they are not as apt to, first of all, know how to get out of poverty, for example, to rise up from all of the adversities that life has passed on. Many are not going to counseling to get healed. Many have not received the help that they need to get healed, but yet generationally these attitudes are perpetuated, and you have people with low self-esteem, people who do not feel good about themselves, raising children who do not feel good about themselves, who have children that don't feel good about themselves, and so forth and so on.
So, well, thank you very much. I think that you just expressed something so important. When I think about, I love the way that you said that a crime was committed against the black race here in this country, and that generationally the wounds of that crime have been borne from one generation to the next. And when I think about the fragility of the human soul, I'm actually completely blown away at the strength of the black race. And I wonder if you could speak about, given the fact that, white people get to go to therapy, more often. Many of them have, not all of them, but some of them have the money to do that. So what have the black people done? And I hate to use, I don't know, I want to be as respectful as possible always. If you prefer that I say African Americans or however, people of color, how do you think they have dealt with this kind of wounding? What has been the outpouring of this wounding? What have been the results of this wounding? Because also a lot of these young people are growing up and they're victimized by the police. As you know, black young men are incarcerated and are thrown into prison vastly more than white or any other race. How are black people, African American people coping? How do you think it's all happening and working now for them?
How we got over as a people started on the plantations, along with the abuse that we encountered. One of the main ways that we got over was through our faith in our God. And a lot of people think that that African Americans were forced into Christianity. Well, my belief is that you can sit somebody in front of a preacher for their whole life, a Christian preacher, and that does not mean that person will end up being a Christian. Christianity is something that cannot be forced. Christianity is a matter of the heart. So someone would have to open up their heart to Christianity in order to be a Christian and believe in Jesus Christ. There were many Africans who were Christians before even coming over to the Americas. So that's how we got over. Those songs that we sing, How I Got Over, and way back when on the plantation, we related to Jesus Christ and his struggles and how he, even unto death, was victorious. And we related to biblical figures like Moses and the Israelites, Joshua, who fought the battle of Jericho, and Daniel, who was in the lion's den. We related to those biblical characters because they suffered, just like we suffered. And so we especially related to the Israelites, who were also slaves, but they were set free. And so we kept the belief that one day we too would be set free, not only in slavery, but also in death. We would be set free. We would have eternal life. And many of us still have that belief today. Many of us, fortunately, have gone on to get the emotional, mental help that we need. I, too, am blown away by some of the accomplishments made by blacks here in our country and all over the world today. I am blown away that we have here in America, just a little over 150 years after slavery, an African American president and a black wife living in the White House. I'm blown away. It blows me away. How do you explain it? I believe it's nobody but God.
Well, I was with you all the way up until you started to talk about Obama, and I'm not going to go into Obama because I do very much appreciate the fact that he and his wife are black. At the same time, I have not so much appreciated his policies, and I don't think we need to go there because I think it would derail all the incredible stuff that you have to bring to us. And I just want to say it's so beautiful to hear your words, and I'm so moved and so happy to bring this to our listeners. Now, I could feel the songs as you began to talk about Joshua and the Battle of Jericho and Moses wading in the water and the whole thing. I want to ask you to sing for us. I don't know if this is the moment, but I think we should probably wait because I want our listeners to understand about your showcases and your music. So, why don't you tell us as a segue into the music, what is, as you see it, what is the legacy of slavery? You mentioned the incredible spirituality of Christianity and love for Jesus Christ and the prophets and figures of the Bible. But can you tell us, just flower us with this legacy first, and then let's talk about your musical work.
Put simply, the legacy of the hope and dream of the African slave is everything that God would want for us as humans on this earth. Most of all, He wants us to love Him, and He wants us to love one another as we love ourselves. And that's the legacy of the hope and dream of the African slave. That's what they hope for. They hope for freedom and justice for all. And if we truly love one another, then we would want freedom and justice for one another, just as we would for ourselves.
It's funny, just listening to you speak, I'm kind of reflecting upon Martin Luther King Jr. And it's amazing. I mean, you're a wonderful orator as well in your own right.
Wow.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you are. Were you influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement as you were growing up? Can you talk about that a little?
Well, I'm not a very politically minded person. I'm more of a God-minded person. But I will say this, that I really began to appreciate Martin Luther King a lot more when Ralph Abernathy's daughter, Donzale Abernathy, came here to Santa Rosa, and she shed light on the heart of Martin Luther King. And one thing that the books cannot reveal about him, the films cannot reveal, is how loving of a man he actually was. And Donzale Abernathy, she really revealed that to all of us. And so she gave us greater insight into the man that he was.
You know, it just seems to me that his words are very much like your own in speaking of the legacy of slavery, this freedom and justice for all. This is what he fought for. And he seems like an eminently loving human being. So, but getting back to the legacy, so you mentioned about freedom and justice. Certainly it was their faith, but it was also their faith and their lives as put into their music. So would you say that your work has been, that you've been trying to really perpetuate this legacy mostly through the arts, through music and through drama?
Yes, because that's my passion. So some people, might do it through politics or what have you, different vehicles, but my passion is the arts.
So can you tell us about some of the productions? Now, just to be clear, your company or your website is legacyshowcases.com. Is that correct?
Yes, legacyshowcases.com.
Okay, so if you, our audience, would like to tune in to Jacqueline's work, you can find some of her productions, pretty much all of them, on legacyshowcases.com. Would you tell us about some of these productions that you've done?
Sure. So after visiting the slaves on the plantation, I was approached by a young lady, and she said, you know what? It would be a great idea if we did a day in the life of a slave. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So she, myself, and her mother got together, and we demonstrated in various forms how a day in the life of a slave would look. And that included education about slavery. We had some audio visuals. We had some performances. We had some reenactments. We had some work projects. We made pillow dresses for little girls in Africa that I actually sent to Africa. We had a slave lunch. I think that's what most people came for. The place was packed. It was exciting. We had a discussion after about some of the issues that involve Black Americans today. We talked about modern day slavery. We had my choral group, which is Eris Choral Group, there singing some songs about the Underground Railroad. So it was very educational, a lot of fun, funny, musical, entertaining. It was an awesome, awesome day. That was my first production when I came back from the plantation. And then I did a production called The Evolution of Mammy, which it stemmed from my Mammy character, Ms. Mammy. And that was about some of the powerful African American women in our country who have made a great impact on our society, such as Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, and Harriet Tubman, Mary McLeod Bethune, Phyllis Wheatley, and others. And we had, it consisted of narrative and monologues by different women in the community. We just cut a CD, Eris Choral Group, and I just got the master copy back, and that it includes 10 songs of Negro spirituals such as Wade in the Water, Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho, Ain't a Dat Good News, Didn't My Lord Deliver Danya, and so forth and so on.
Hey, can I ask you this? And by the way, I've got your website up here. I just want to read to our listeners about this play, Evolution of Mammy, if I could. Considered a faithful, hardworking, obese, dark-skinned, coarse, maternal, unattractive, desexualized, and obedient figure who worked in the big house on the slave plantations, the strong and confident Mammy was unpredictably birthed due to the diaspora of Africans to the Americas. Despite the harmful intentions of her oppressors, through her struggles of suffrage, abuse, and equality, no chains have been able to keep her in bondage, as still, even today, she continues to rise. So I'm wondering, is this the moment that you might grace us with your beautiful, beautiful voice and sing to us just part of whatever you're comfortable with from either that play or any of the others? How's that for putting you on the spot?
Sure, and I'm getting ready to do it.
Okay, all right.
Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. You can talk about your men of Gideon, and you can talk about your men of Saul, but there's none like good old Joshua and the battle of Jericho. Hallelujah. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Sing with me, Jericho. Sing with me, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down.
Bravo! And of course, there's so much more behind that. And Mandy, I just remembered that, of course, I know that you're here with us. How has it been? How did you meet Jacqueline?
Jacqueline and I were introduced through Muka, who is the owner of Prairie Sun Recording Studios. And Muka called me one day and he said, "You've got to meet this lady and you got to check out her show." I was moved so much by her presentation, The Life of a Slave, and how she combined the oral teaching and the history with the authentic songs and dances and dramatization. After the show, I introduced myself to her, and since then we've been meeting on a regular basis. We've performed a couple of times together, combining my family band as kind of a warm-up act. Our friendship is a newly formed one, and I feel like part of my role we're still kind of in this discovery stage, is to support Jacqueline and help promote her and her message, and I get a lot of fulfillment out of doing that. We are discovering what we can do and offer collectively. Through our relationship, we're kind of each digging into our history and our conditioned belief systems. We're challenging each other with difficult questions that sometimes we're afraid to ask, but it feels like a comfortable place where we can discuss these things. We're each honoring our own roots from our culture while working together for a positive change. We do know that we want to work together to sing both traditional and contemporary songs as well as compose originals. And we both have a desire and a vision that our voices will be used together for positive change and bring hope to our community. And through this process, we're discovering, and I think I'm speaking for Jacqueline too, and healing for ourselves.
So you've been involved. That sounds fantastic, Mandy. I know that you've also been involved in your own right in producing your own album with gospel music. Can you talk about how you were drawn into gospel music and what that has meant to you?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, my mother was a singer, and she brought me into music. She was not present in the home a lot because she was pursuing her passion of singing. But she had a wonderful collection which included Bonnie Raitt and Aretha Franklin, and they're kind of like my surrogate mothers, because when my mother was out singing, I would put on these records and sing over and over to them, and I connected with these women. And what I think I connected to, and what I think I share with Jacqueline, is I connected to their sufferings. And so I felt something different than I felt through my own culture, that I felt through the Black culture, was this freedom of expression, of this touching someplace deep in my soul, the pain that I was experiencing, and able to sing about it and express it. And as I've grown through the years and attended the Black churches and the white churches, something that really resonates with me is the freedom of dance and the freedom to moan and the freedom to express yourself that I found in the Black churches that really connected with me.
That's so beautiful. Unfortunately, we don't have the visuals right now, although American Freedom Radio will be moving toward a video platform soon. But Mandy is is a thin little white girl. She's very, very pretty, and she's small. And, Jacqueline is this majestic presence, and the two of them together are really a force. Mandy, I don't know if you're not prepared to sing anything for us today, are you, of your gospel music?
I'm not prepared. I do have a CD coming out in early spring, which is a gospel-based CD, and Jacqueline and I are just beginning the process, but we do hope to have an offering sometime very near in the future.
Well, I would certainly love to come and see you both perform. I want to give the website of Mandy, too. So that's Mandy, MANDY, Brooks, BROOKS.com. And Jacqueline's website, again, is legacyshowcases.com. She's also got a website, drjacquelinelawrence.com, and that's JACQUELINELAWRENCE.com. So, Mandy, do you feel, you mentioned that it was your own suffering that connected to the suffering that was expressed in black music. And I think also stylistically, you mentioned that you were really inspired by Aretha Franklin and Bonnie Raitt, who of course is not black, but she's also like wicked cool. When we met, I just will say that I was shedding tears of my own feeling of guilt and responsibility as a white woman who, I grew up in New York City. I lived very close to Harlem. The disparity that happened at 96th Street when Harlem is cut off and then, white New York City began, this was back in the 60s and 70s, was extremely painful to me. I was raised by a lot of black nannies, actually. When my white mother, went off to play bridge or do whatever she was going to do during the day. She also worked a little bit. But I was just aware of the largeness of the black soul and the black experience of suffering, and really feeling at a loss for how to come to grips with it. And so I've carried this kind of very justifiably white guilt around this, and which is one other reason I'm so thrilled to have you both, and especially Jacqueline, on the show today. But before we head back to Jacqueline, I just wondered, can you speak about that as a white woman who has a particular love and attraction to black music, about the racial element and how it is for you being white drawn to black music?
Yeah, it's when you're a kid and you're playing with another child, like my children playing with Jacqueline's grandchildren, there's not an issue of black and white. You're just playing. So in one sense, that's how I feel with Jacqueline. It's just like we're just playing, we're just with each other. And then, when you showed up and we had our meeting at the coffee shop, and the first thing you did is start to cry, it did get me in touch with that, and I do think it's something that is in us as white people that we don't know where to put it, and so sometimes it's just better not to talk about it. And so that's what I appreciate about my relationship with Jacqueline, is I'm starting to look at myself on this road of discovery and find those answers to those questions that I have.
Okay, sounds good. So Jacqueline, back to you. Let's see here. I asked you to talk about the plays. By the way, folks, if you go to her website, Legacy Showcases, you will find that she's got about 5 or 6 different plays here. Jacqueline, do you write these plays yourself?
Yes, I do, Kate, and I do not call them plays. I call them productions or presentations. I have written some plays, and we've done plays. However, these are more presentations with narrative, with some acting, some singing, but I like to call them presentations. And speaking of which, there's one particular presentation that I did not mention yet, and that is The Spirit of Us. And that is a phenomenal Black history musical production. And it speaks about the music and how it came to the United States along with the slaves, the musical style at least, in the ships and on the auction blocks and then on to the plantations, and how that music evolved into gospel and jazz and rap, and even on the plantations, how much of a healing that music was and how it just really provided freedom for the soul, and how that music has impacted the world today and even has gone full circle to impact today's African music.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because really contemporary music, I would say since the 50s, has been about the merging of, white music with black music. It's really black music that has catapulted, what we would call, American music into what it is today. Even in rock and roll, from the percussive influence of black music. It's been phenomenal. Are you yourself interested at all in jazz, or have you explored jazz as an art form, or are you mostly staying within the gospel and, the spirituals as far as your own expression?
I recently discovered 93.7 here, which is a jazz station, and that's what I listen to a lot of times. I love R&B, but unfortunately, I can't get that station very well, so the jazz station is absolutely beautiful. At home, I do listen to jazz sometimes, so I believe jazz is just absolutely beautiful.
It'd be very interesting to see what you do with it as you grow in your own music. So, okay. Can you talk about how the performances or I know you're not calling them plays, you're calling them, what do you call them again? Productions. Okay. How have the productions, do you think, influenced the community? What kind of receptivity do you have? And I'm talking for black people and for white people. For all people.
For all people. So I get very few younger blacks involved. I can't really explain why. I don't know why. The older generation seems to be most interested in honoring the legacy of the hope and dream of the African slave, black and white. The whites are the ones who are really excited about it and almost hungry for it. I have been in a classroom also where I gave a presentation to white children about slave music, and we did dances and we played games and we sang slave music, and I portrayed Ms. Lucretia Borgia, ma'am, and they absolutely loved it. They had fun, and I had a lot of fun with them. So I do go to schools and I do workshops about slave music and give presentations to the children. But mostly, and we go to assisted living facilities. I have a few people that have come into my midst that are so excited about what I'm doing that they want to educate me more. I had one guy, his name is Tim Huff. He's in the process of writing a book on slavery. He's a white man. He lives up north about 100 miles. He came down to my production, and in our production, we used some hose, and we used the oldest hose that we could find. I went all over the place, antique stores and so forth, looking for hose. But he said he loved our production. The only problem was our hose weren't authentic enough. So what does he do? This man from 100 miles away, he made me some hose that looked more authentic. So I've had a lot of people supporting me. I've had people sending me different books and telling me their stories. People just calling me, talking to me about their experiences. I've had people asking me different questions about they want to know the truth about how black people feel. All I can really tell them is how I feel. I don't feel the way all blacks feel. One black lady just told me the other day that black people don't really want to talk about slavery because all that shows is that we were oppressed, but we were a great people before slavery, and that's what they would like to focus on. Or they would like to focus more on the greatness that exists today. Well, that's fine. There's people who do that. I'm doing what my master told me to do, and that is to honor the legacy of the hope and dream of the African slave, which includes where we were in Africa, the powerful people we were in Africa, and it also includes where we are today as African American people. But the heart of what I do exists on the plantations from the 17th through the 19th centuries.
So tell us about the plantation experience. You talked about that when we met, and I'm very interested in hearing more why you think, or what is it about the plantation that is so significant in your work?
Well, here we are in America, so that was the birth of black people here in America. Not that there weren't blacks in America before slavery, but that was the birth of us coming here in abundance and being here in abundance. So that was the birth of us becoming African Americans, which is what I am. And had those slaves not been kidnapped against their will, see, God said that all things work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So had those slaves not been kidnapped and brought over to the Americas, had those slave catchers and British people who brought the slaves over here not sinned by doing so, because, and I call it a sin because there are scriptures in the Bible that will tell you that what they did was a sin. And even when the slaves ran away, for example, the Bible says don't go get them and bring them back. Let them go free. So there were a lot of sins involved, but had all that not happened, I wouldn't be here living in this wonderful country here today. So I appreciate all that the slaves went through so that I could be here talking on your internet radio station and being friends with Miss Amanda Brooks and, just having relationships with so many other people of different colors and cultures and just being an American. It's a wonderful thing to be an American, and it is a wonderful thing to be an African American. For those who don't understand how we can be so oppressed as a people and still be so content with being black, I wouldn't trade my blackness for anything in the world. I love being black.
Tell us more about that.
Well, being black is fun. Being black is funny. We get to be funny. In our culture, we are honest people for the most part. We're open with each other for the most part. There's not a lot of manipulation going on for the most part. We have such a strong kinship, even though, yes, black on black crime. We have such a strong kinship with each other after we get past all the negativity. We enjoy our dances. We enjoy our food. We enjoy the things that we consider funny. We enjoy the language that has, evolved over the centuries due to our culture. We just really, when it's all said and done, we just really have a strong love for each other.
Can I say something?
Please, Mandy, go ahead.
regards to the question that you asked about what do we do with the white guilt, and one thing that I think we need to do as white people, which is to talk about it and express it and ask questions, and I think that in relation to our black brothers and sisters, it should not be operating out of guilt. It should be operating out of love. Who, like with Jacqueline, it's like, I don't want to support her because I feel guilty. I want to support her because I love her.
It's kind of hard not to love her. I mean, just to hear her speak, what impresses me is not only her speaking, but her representation of the beauty and the largesse and the magnificence of what it is to be a black woman in America today, and the black race in general. I have to say, we are coming up against 2 more minutes with you lovely ladies, and I hope that you will consider coming back to this show, because there is so much more that I want to ask you. I wonder in the remaining 2 minutes, Jacqueline, if there's anything in particular that you would like to say in relationship to your Christian ministry, the end time ministry, or your experience in your work as a black woman today.
Yes, there are a couple of other things that I would like to bring up. First of all, I would not like to bring up my end time ministry, but I would love to have the opportunity to do so in the future. I would like to say about the white guilt, I agree with you, Mandy, that it should be out of love, but it's what we all need to do. I feel there's something we all need to do, and we can replace that guilt with love, and we can replace that, and we can demonstrate that love with action. And where we have to be honest with the fact that, yes, slavery has affected, negatively impacted black people. Let's be honest about that first. And in ways that they've obviously been negatively impacted, there's no reason why we're not just naturally killers and murderers and all that other stuff. We're not naturally that. But however we've been negatively impacted, I believe that...
Keep talking. You got another 30 seconds.
Okay, great. I believe we all need to come together and provide reparations, not in the form of money, so get your hands out of your pocket, but in the form of services.
Jacqueline, I am going to have to end here, and I just want to say thank you so much, both Dr. Jacqueline and Mandy, and please come back.
Thank you.
Let's do part 2, okay?
Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Love you guys.
Love you.
We will preserve the future for our children and all living things.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.